Hey everyone, my name is Becca and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time with us, welcome. And if you've read a first chapter with us before, welcome back. I am so excited to have you today because we are going to be reading the first chapter of Level 13, a slacker novel by Gordon Korman. Now, if you have read a first chapter with me before, you have likely seen that I love Gordon Korman. I love his novels. I love his writing style. I think that his books are super engaging and perfect for middle school students. So if you have not read any of Gordon Korman's books yet, time to get on board because they are awesome. So this book is a sequel to Slacker, which is shown here on the back. Let's go ahead and read the synopsis on the front and side cover. Level up. Cameron Boxer, king of the slackers, has finally found something worth his time. By gaming online, he can find both fame and fortune, especially with Elvis, a beaver who seems to love video games as much as Cam, at his side or on his shoulder. The only problem, things keep getting in the way of Cam's gaming, like school and the club he accidentally started, and the misguided people in his life who don't think beavers should be playing video games. It's going to take some trickery, some close calls, and a fierce devotion to slacking in order for Cam to get to his goal, conquering the game's infamous level 13. But if any slacker can do it, Cam can. All right. So we are going to just go ahead and dive on into that first chapter. Teachers, if you're reading this with your students, I do have a free handout in the description to help your students follow along with this first chapter. All right, let's dive in. Now, if you're not familiar with Gordon Korman's books, every chapter is written from the point of view of a different main character. So chapter 1 is written from Cameron Boxer's perspective, who is our main character that we just read about in the synopsis. All right. Flying in on a battle bus, it didn't get much more ill than that. The setup on the wide screen TV, the map, meaning the island, ready to be invaded by 50 battle royale players, including me. The me part was important, since this was my live game stream. A webcam captured my every move. On the coffee table, a laptop showed exactly what my online followers would be seeing, my amazing gameplay. And in a window in the top corner, a view of me working the controller like I was born to do it, which I was. The far side of the stream page was reserved for viewer comments. Right now, there were none because I hadn't gone live yet. Another possible reason for that was the fact that I only had 8 followers, and one of them was my own phone. Everything has to start somewhere. Top gaming streamers could have hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of subscribers. Their every move was eagerly watched by hordes of fans all over the world. My father always told me, I know video games are your hobby, Cam, but they'll never be a real job. Wrong, Dad. If you have enough subscribers, you could make truckloads of cash. Besides, I always found the word hobby to be a little insulting. Gaming was a lot more than a hobby for me. It was a lifestyle. And if I could start up a successful stream now, while I was still in middle school, I might never have to get a real job. My guidance counselor, Mr. Fan something, said that it was important to choose a career that gave you pleasure and satisfaction. Well, that was a slam dunk for me. I'd be getting paid to play video games. It would all start with the flip of a switch. My thumb reached for the button on the controller in my hands. Ding dong! I ignored the doorbell. There were no doorbells on the island. The bell sounded a second time, and then a third. This was followed by a loud, persistent pounding on the door. Somebody get that! I shouted before remembering I was alone in the house. Next, my phone began to ring. That bothered me. With my phone tied up, my follower count went down to 7. I answered it. What? Cam, I'm at your house. It was Jordan Tolfson, one of Sycamore Middle School's student government types. Yeah, it sounds like you're about to bust the door down. We had a history of door problems at our house, so I was kind of sensitive about it. It was mostly my fault and the fire department's, but that's another story. You're home? He was incredulous. String's party started half an hour ago. String knows I might not be able to make it. At least he'd figure it out when I didn't show up. Don't you know anything about optics? Optics was one of Jordan's favorite political words. You're head of the Positive Action Group. You have to be seen there. Positive Action Group. I had no one to blame but myself for that. In my own defense, I only invented the PAG to make myself look like a student leader so mom and dad wouldn't ban me from video games. It was never supposed to be a real club. But there's no way to tell that to the 874 kids who joined, eager to pick up garbage, walk old ladies across the street, paint the orphanage, and do all kinds of other community service. Not that there was anything bad about community service. We helped a lot of people. I even got kind of into it toward the end. The problem was community service took up a lot of prime gaming time. The happiest day of my life was when the principal disbanded the PAG last fall. Suddenly, I had my life back, and nobody could even blame me for it. It was Dr. LaPierre's fault, not mine. It was paradise. Then the PAG got reinstated just when my streaming career was about to take off. Paradise lost. Tell String I can't get away, I told Jordan over the phone. Better yet, don't tell him anything. There are going to be a zillion people at the party. No one will ever notice I'm not there. Are you nuts? Everyone will notice. You're Cam Boxer. The kids in this town, they really knew how to hurt a guy. Listen. A click signified that I was getting another call. Hang on a sec. As soon as I switched over, I could hear loud music and a lot of excited chatter. Cam? I instantly identified the deep voice over the background noise. Xavier Megget, another Pagger, as PAG members referred to themselves, and judging by the music, he was definitely at the party. Where are you? Xavier demanded. You're coming, right? My heart sank. It was one thing to blow off Jordan, but Xavier? He was 2 years older than the rest of us. He got held back a couple of times because his family sent him on trips, code for another stretch in juvie. For him, the PAG wasn't just community service. It was community service, the kind you got sentenced to by a judge. In Xavier's eyes, the club had straightened out his whole life. Xavier, hi, how's the party? It'll be better when you get here, came his deep baritone. Another click. Sorry, Xavier, gotta take this. I switched to the third call, which was from Pavel Dyson, one of my two best friends, along with Chuck Kinsey. We made up the awesome threesome, or at least that's what we called ourselves on the gaming circuit. You'd better sit down, Cam. This is technically huge, and if you're eating anything, spit it out. You'll choke when you hear this. The background music was a perfect match for Xavier's. I couldn't believe it. Are you at String's party? I challenged him. You're supposed to be watching my stream. I go live any minute. You've got to reschedule, man. This is an emergency. Chuck. Someone cranked up the volume, drowning out Pavel's voice. What about Chuck? I shouted into the phone. Is he there with you? Pavel and Chuck were 2 of my 8 followers. If they were both at the party, that left only 6, and one of the 6 was me. Even if my entire fan base showed up online, I'd be streaming for, at most, 5 people. 8 was technically nothing to write home about, but 5 was pathetic. Obviously, I couldn't start streaming until I put in an appearance at this party. I shut off everything and headed upstairs, shrugging into a jacket. I threw open the door and rushed outside, slamming pretty hard into Jordan and sending the 2 of us rolling across the lawn. Who knew the guy would still be there after I blew him off? If I'd gone out the back way, would he have still been standing on my stoop tomorrow morning? Sorry, I mumbled as we brushed ourselves off. We walked 4 blocks to the home of Freeland First String McBean, star wide receiver and flanker back of the Sycamore Middle School Seahawks. Jordan talked nonstop every step of the way. I want to go into politics when I grow up. That's why I joined the PAG in the first place. I thought it could help me get elected to student body president, but elections are all about beating the other candidate. And in the PAG, we learn that cooperation is what gets things done and makes the world a better place. He went on and on. The closer we got to the McBean house, the harder it was to hear him. The music was blasting through the whole neighborhood. Halfway up the front walk, he stopped, regarding me expectantly. What? I asked, mystified. So what do you think I should do? I hadn't listened to a single word for the past 3 blocks. I remembered something about politics, but after the first couple minutes of boringness, my mind automatically filed it under who cares? Part of my lifestyle was filtering out all the white noise so I could keep my focus razor sharp on video games where it belonged. But Jordan looked so serious, so anxious to hear my viewpoint that I didn't have the heart to tell him I'd tuned out. Why would you ask me about, that? My answer seemed to baffle him. Because you're Cam Boxer. The PAG is your baby. If anybody's got his head screwed on straight, it has to be you. I was staring at him when the door burst open. Cam! String reached out his long receiver's arms, locked them around my neck, and hauled me into the house. Hey, everybody! Cam's here! The roar of Cam drowned out the blaring music. I was pulled through the crush of bodies, my back pounded, my hands high-fived, and my shoulders slapped. I was nearly hugged breathless. It was the perfect example of why I hadn't wanted to come in the first place. It was nice to be loved, but not be loved so much that you didn't have 5 seconds to get your streaming career off the ground. I almost started to wish people would hate me a little bit, or at least leave me alone. String gave me a numbing chest bump. Is this fire or what? He roared in my ear. Nobody throws a party like the String. He always talked about himself like he was talking about somebody else, somebody really great. Yeah, fire. Looking around, I had to admit it. The living room was packed with kids dancing, bouncing up and down to the beat, because there wasn't enough space to move side to side. Every hand held a can of soda or water bottle, filling the air with a fine spray that came down like mist. Half-eaten pizza slices covered every surface in the house, tables, chairs, couches. I could feel, but not see, the layer of chip crumbs covering the carpet. The McBeans were going to have a major cleanup on their hands once this party ended, if it ever did. It showed no signs of slowing down, and now that the head of the PAG was here, things could really go off the chain. I followed a conga line into the kitchen where the pizza boxes were stacked to the ceiling and kids were starting to help themselves to slices of 6-foot hero sandwich. The clock on the microwave provided a depressing reminder that I should have been 11 minutes into my stream. What if the 5 followers I did know got discouraged and stopped following me? Gamers weren't very patient. They were used to non-stop action. My eyes fell on the kitchen floor, which led to String's backyard. Escape. That was the plan. I could be home in 5 minutes and online in another 2. This party was so jam-packed and crazy that no one was going to notice if I'd walked in, walked through, and walked out. All they'd remember is that they'd seen me. I fist-bumped Kelly Hannity, slipped between 2 girls who were eating half-melted ice cream cake with chopsticks, and stepped through the door. Grass under my feet. Freedom. A very large hand closed on my shoulder. Hi, Cam. The deep voice moved air. Xavier. What was he doing outside the party instead of inside it? He thrust a shoebox into my arms. This is for you. Shoes? In answer, he tipped open the lid so that I could see into the box. It was piled high with sugar cookies, each one decorated with a little flower drawn in pink and white icing. Thanks, I managed. I baked them myself, he informed me proudly. My mom had to help crack the eggs. Who knew that cracking eggs was so much harder than cracking skulls? They're great, but I'm going to get pretty fat eating all these. They're not for eating, Xavier explained. They're for the PAG. I was mystified. Why does the PAG need cookies? To sell, he insisted. For the fundraiser, remember? Mr. Fanshaw said. That explained a lot. If Mr. Fan whatever had said it, for sure I paid no attention at all. Whenever the PAG's faculty advisor opened his mouth, my brain went into hibernation mode. Although I did remember something called the new approach. If you sent all 874 paggers out to do community service, so many middle schoolers had a 50-50 chance of wrecking the place they were supposed to serve. So the PAG was switching to fundraising for good causes. Instead of helping people directly, we would give them money so that they could help themselves. For example, the Sycamore Public Library needed a new building on account of the fact that the old one had been condemned by the town engineers. It was really just an old mansion built in the 1800s. The fact that it hadn't collapsed decades ago was a miracle. In my opinion, the part that really should have been condemned was their video game collection, which was so old that if you wanted a system to play on, you'd have to dig it out of a time capsule. Xavier's cookies were meant to be sold at the PAG fundraiser for the library. There was a chance that I was supposed to be planning the fundraiser since I was the president of the PAG. That's why Xavier gave the cookies to me instead of someone who had the faintest idea of what to do with them. Ugh, there was no way I could escape now, not with Xavier breathing down my neck. So I thanked him and headed back into the house to search for another exit. Navigating the crowd while holding the shoebox in front of me was practically impossible. I barely managed to get the box down onto the kitchen counter so it wouldn't get battered and crushed. One thing I never wanted to have to do was tell Xavier that his hard work had never lived to earn money for the library. Almost everyone I bumped into asked about the big fundraiser I was working on. The more people I talked to, the more depressed I became. It just served to remind me how the PAG was holding back my streaming career. Pavel grabbed me by the arm. "Dude, where have you been?" he hissed. "Wait till you hear this." I cut him off. "Can't it wait? I've got to get home to my stream." "No," he insisted. "Technically, this is world-changing." "Will you cut it out with the technically?" Then I spotted it, and my entire train of thought disappeared into a puff of smoke. The lid of the shoebox sat beside it on the kitchen counter. A small crowd had gathered around, a forest of arms reaching inside. Pink flowered cookies were disappearing into mouths at an alarming rate. Out of the corner of my eye, I spied Xavier stepping in from the backyard. If he saw this... I turned my back on Pavel and lunged for the counter. "Where are you going?" Pavel wailed. There was no time to answer. Xavier was only one long stride away, and the cookie box? Empty. All I could do was get the lid back on to hide the fact that the cookies were gone. At the last second, I tossed my phone in there just in case Xavier nudged the box and didn't feel his cookies rattling around. Yes, I know, one phone didn't equal loads of baked goods, but there was no time to think it through. Anyway, it had to be better than nothing. With Xavier a few people behind me in the kitchen, I had no choice but to push out into the mobbed living room. Now that I didn't have any more cookies to worry about, I used the shoebox as a battering ram. More high fives and hugs. But the good news was that string was nowhere in sight. A plan B formed in my mind. I would plow straight through the heart of the party and out the front door. I almost made it. By the time I hit the front foyer, I had the shoebox out in front of me like a cowcatcher. The front door yawned open directly in front of me. Only two people blocked my way. "Cam, we've been looking all over for you." Chuck, my other best friend, the third member of the awesome threesome. With him was Daphne Leibowitz, who had been the first person to join the PAG without knowing it was a fake club. In my mind, I had always blamed her for what had happened. But I also gave her credit because the PAG wasn't all bad. It was just all bad for my lifestyle. "We've got big news," Daphne announced with a wink at Chuck. It was never good when Daphne had big news. Chuck knew that as well as I did, but you couldn't tell from the goofy grin on his face. "We're a ship," he said, beaming. "What, like the Titanic?" I asked. "A relationship," Daphne corrected. "We're going out." Chuck put an arm around her, looking as proud as I'd ever seen him. It took me a split second to realize that the crash I heard was just in my head. It was the sound of the entire world turning upside down. At that very instant, the cookies rang. I was so stunned by the Chuck and Daphne bombshell that I fumbled my phone out of the shoebox. As it fell, I read the caller ID. Pavel, probably trying to warn me about the big announcement and save me a nasty shock. The phone hit the floor with a bang. I scrambled to pick it up. Distorted by the jagged screen crack, Pavel's caller ID disappeared and was replaced by a picture of my streaming setup. The gaming part was blank, but there was a new posting on the comment feed. I squinted to read it. "Why isn't anything happening? This stream stinks. Unfollow." If there was a word no streamer ever wanted to see, it was that one. I had to do something about the PAG. the PAG. My lifestyle depended on it. All right. So that is the first chapter of Level 13 by Gordon Korman. If you're interested in reading this book, I recommend it. And that's really all I have for today. So looking forward to you guys joining in again for another First Chapter Friday. See you next time.